I'd like to welcome you to a game analysis on Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. Hearthstone is an online card game using the same characters and themes as the popular game of Warcraft. It allows players to play against each other or against a computer, and the aim is to take away the opponent's health by playing cards strategically. Here is a selected screenshot during play of Hearthstone. So within the circle there, you see 5 diamonds. Those diamonds represent mana, which means this is the 5th hand that is taking place during this game. That also means that the player has the option to play a total of 5 points for this hand. The number 25 on the player's card represents their health level. So the goal is to burn down your opponent's health before your health expires. The number at the top left of each card, as well as the bottom left, represents the amount of mana that is needed in order to attack your opponent's minions or the opponent themselves. So in this case, any of the cards that are currently lit up in green can be played during this turn of play. It can be used to attack a minion, take down a taunt, or take health points away from the opponent. So strategically, the player has to decide which one he wants to play. There is a level of recognition and recall that are used on the various cards and remembering the characters and what their powers are. This enables the player to have a lot of autonomy while they're playing the game. Also, players can make an analysis of the cards and evaluate which cards to use. They can also begin to predict what cards their player or their opponent might have. Over on the far left-hand corner, the row of cards going vertically is actually the cards that have been played. So it is possible for a very astute player to almost card count and decide what might his opponent still have in his hand. During each play of turn, the players will engage in problem solving and critical thinking. They also will take part in risk taking as they choose their cards. Based on the nature of play, Hearthstone is certainly a constructivist theory learning. According to Stapleton and Stefanak, the constructive learning theory is an active social process where knowledge is constructed through the exploration of their world and based on prior knowledge. Jerome Bruner helped formulate the learning theory with cognitive constructivism. And one of the elements is predisposition, and that has to do with providing ill-structured problems, in this case, a card game in which we believe that we could win when we're playing, with some degree of uncertainty though. So there's an element of risk and uncertainty that leads to that motivation. The second element is the structure of knowledge, and this occurs experientially and could occur through reading about or understanding and Jerome Bruner, with his work on cognitive constructivism, helped to formulate a theory for learning. And one of the first elements is a predisposition, which is providing an ill-structured problem in which there is some uncertainty as to the result. In this case, it is whether or not the player has the opportunity to beat his opponent in the online card game of Hearthstone. The second is the structure of knowledge, and this can occur within the game either experientially, as the player just begins to learn through trial and error as to when they can play a card or the result of playing cards, and or by reading through and studying the rules of the game and the various cards and their characters' abilities. The third element is optimal sequence of material. And this can occur when the student or player is mastered a material and then can use that knowledge in order to sort and organize for future problem solving. So in this case, the more a player understands the card game rules and the elements within each card that can be played, they then can begin to organize that and problem solve and strategize so that they have a greater opportunity for winning. And the last one is reinforcement. And this reinforcement can come either internally or externally through rewards and feedback. And sometimes within the game, this is given through verbal comments that the opponent might make. It might be the awarding of signs or points and levels at the end of play, so that provides the learner, the player, the opportunity and motivation to continue to play the game, and each time the result might be slightly different. Within the card game Hearthstone, there are several elements of the constructivist learning theory that are evident, and the first one is choice. There are several ways throughout the game that the player has choices, and their choices have consequences. The second part is scaffolding. By providing scaffolding, the player begins at an easier stage and slowly the level of play is increased. Part of this happens with new cards being added to the deck over time, as well as challenges being presented to the players, both to play within a group setting and other players. Another element with the constructivist learning theory is the zone of proximal development by Vygotsky. And it provides just the right amount of challenge without the player feeling overwhelmed. So let's take a look at these within the game of play. So when a card deck is first dealt and the player receives 3 cards to start a new round, they have the option of either keeping the cards that are dealt with to them or trading out those cards. So since the very first level of play, you have only 1 mana, having cards of this nature with a 4 and 2 3s will not allow you to play that very first hand. So a player can opt out of those high cards to start out with. Here is another example where with 5 mana, there are a number of different options that a player gets to select. But there's also repeatability in regards to the types of cards that are played and the powers that those characters have. And over time, the player will begin to learn and memorize those and begin to use them strategically. And as far as understanding the zone of proximal development, when a player chooses to play another opponent, then they are matched up with what's considered a worthy opponent, which is somebody who has a similar skill level as the current player themselves. In this way, the feeling of confidence and competence is increased as the player has the chance and feeling that they may win. Another element is that ability to increase the difficulty. So if you see the comment underneath the red bar there, it says each class has 5 different basic cards you can unlock as you level up. So as a player becomes more skilled and they level up, their level of play will also increase. Now, within the motivational characteristics, the ARC's model of motivation and self-determination theory are both evident. Within the ARC's model, first element is attention. So if I'm a previous gamer with Blizzard and I'm familiar with the Warcraft characters, then certainly right away my attention has been grabbed. But perhaps you've never played Warcraft before, which I hadn't. When I first opened up Hearthstone, there was an animated video that looked very Disney-like and engaging, and it certainly brought me in, a non-gamer, wanting to play for the very first time. The other element of ARCs is relevance to the player. With Hearthstone, it would interest those who have a desire to play a strategy-based game. It also has an appeal for the Warcraft fans who have been around for a while. And Because it levels up at a slow rate, a player begins to feel confident, which is the third element of the ARCS model. They begin to feel like they have a chance of winning. As the game progresses to more difficulty, the new cards are added and skills have to be improved. There's also confidence as they play against other players that have similar ability. And then there's a level of satisfaction that takes place, and this allows the players to feel good about their accomplishments. This can come through intrinsic or external means. Within the game, there are celebratory sounds, bonus points, and even congratulatory statements that are made for playing well. For those who need external motivation, there is the ability to play competitively and even be ranked among other players. Within the theory of self-determination, again, there's that evidence of competence where there's a degree of control or skill as the player progresses through the game, and also a high level of autonomy. So the player has numerous opportunities to make choices, and the ability to make those choices increases their motivation and desire to play. And lastly, there is a relatedness that takes place within Hearthstone. So while Hearthstone does not have a chat box within the game of play, players can connect with their friends. They can also befriend those that they have encountered before in a random selection battle. And there are actually real life gatherings of other Hearthstone players. So there is certainly a sense of community and social interaction within Hearthstone. Hearthstone is primarily a rules-based game, and within that, there are a number of cognitive learning elements that take place. So certainly there's a knowledge and understanding that takes place with being able to recall the rules of the game, the play options that are available, and the cards within the decks and those powers that are related to those. There's also an understanding of the consequences that happen when a certain card or a combination of cards are played during a round. There's also the repetition that takes place. So the cards and characters show up repeatedly, and this repetition allows for mastery of the elements and increases the motivation as players become more competent in their playing. There's certainly a level, though, of sorting and elaboration as they have to sift through the cards and then build upon what they already know when they encounter a new deck of cards or a new opponent. Then within the higher order thinking skills and what learning is taking place, certainly there is a good bit of application, analysis, and evaluation. So within each round, the player has to determine strategically what are going to be the best options in order for them to have the greatest advantage over their opponent. They have to weigh out the risk over the benefits. So certainly at times when you leave yourself open by using one of your minions to attack your opponent, then you're hoping that in the next round of play, as you're trying to think like your opponent, that maybe they don't have the card and that then you will have your second chance to come around and defeat them. So here again is just a visual representation of the elements I just spoke of. So there are the rules that are associated with the game and knowing how much mana you have in order to know which cards you have the ability to play. There's the knowledge and understanding that comes with each card and their powers and what they can do to your opponent and their minions. And there also is the evaluation and analysis of the order and sequence of which cards might be played and which ones strategically will give you the best opportunity to win. So now let's put it all together. So the next slide is actually a shortened video recording of a turn that I had playing and trying to just think through as I've learned the game how to best battle my opponent. You'll see the elements of motivation. You'll be able to hear the sounds that are given to increase the player's desire to play. There's actually even a little bit of taunting that takes place to just build that competitive spirit, because certainly within any game, there's an emotional connection and there's that desire to win and beat your opponent. So take a look.